We're playing a board game or two, I'm guessing, over the Christmas period, because we all do. I have my own particular favourites. There are ones that we get out every year and everyone goes, oh no, here we go again. And the wars will start all over again. There are certain sides and there are certain partners you play better with on board games. But the first board games were created, it was created called Senet back in ancient Egypt, back in 3100 BC. One of the big board game creators, Gary Wyatt, inspired by the number plates game in his head whilst travelling. Yeah, I played that one as well. We had different ones. Created his first board game called Alpha Animals. Gary then went on to form the Green Board Game Company in 1991, which has stemmed from three key areas: environment, education and manufacturing in the UK. Well, he's joined us now. He's got a pretty successful company, and he's joining us from our line in London. Good to have you with us, Gary.
Good to be here, Murray.
So board games they've got a fantastic history to them, and I guess we don't sense that really, do we? We tend to just take the board games that we've always liked and then look for one or two new ones, read the rules a couple of times, and then get everyone around the table.
Absolutely. They're a great medium for social gatherings, and they'll be here forever because of that.
It does seem that it's one of those things that despite whatever technology we've got, and let's face it, there's enough flying around every household these days from whichever Xbox and 42-inch screen, and we still go back to the basics of a board game. Why is that?
Well, I think a good board game has a mechanism in it that draws people together. I mean, a really good example is we've got a range called BrainBox, and in that game, it's a visual observation game. So a 7-year-old can play with a 77-year-old and will probably win because they will be more observant than the other players.
That's that whole generational challenge again, isn't it?
It is very much so. And whilst we've all got mobile phones and there's lots of apps around and computer games, which are great in their own right, they don't bring you together as a social unit, whether it's a family or just friends playing together. And that's why board games and games will always be here and will always be firm favourites. And you're quite right. We bring out our favourites every year to play as a family too. It's
interesting because, I mean, BrainBox has been described now as the modern classic. There are classics, and of course we can all throw things like, it doesn't matter what it is there, but there's stuff like the Monopoly and all the other bits and pieces. And they will always be there. But you obviously get inspiration from all sorts of areas. Which areas do you look at? Because you're obviously thinking of new games all the time.
Yeah, from the environment, from where we are, from what we're doing. My wife, for example, has been a teacher for 30 years, and we chat things through at home. And even in the BrainBox series, we looked at the maths curriculum for years 3 and years 4. How could we do that in a visual observation way that will help reinforce what children are learning at school? And it's a massive seller. If you go onto the Amazon bestseller list for toys and games, there it is. As you quite rightly said, there are the perennial favourites. You've got your Monopolies, your Scrabbles, etc. But a variety of BrainBox games are there all year round, but particularly this time of year for exactly that reason. You're absolutely right.
When you're saying about the environment and the education side of things, it all stems into topicality, doesn't it?
It does, and I mean, certain things I won't touch. But for example, I was just chatting to some people about inventions. What are the best inventions that have been around? And I thought, So I went along to the Science Museum, had a chat to them, and we did a BrainBox game just based on the 55 inventions that have changed our lives. And it's absolutely fascinating to go back and do the research. Or another one we did was we're talking about history. If I said to you, what are the 70 events that have changed world history, what are they? So you write them down on a bit of it, and it's really fascinating thing because we're very Europe-centric here, but the world's a big place. And so I started looking at history in China and history, the Maoris in New Zealand, for example. They're very, very big events in those parts of the world. And it's really, really interesting. But then taking that idea and putting it into an accessible game that a 7-year-old and a 77-year-old can play, I mean, that's the trick, and that's why the BrainBox series works so well.
I was intrigued with your inspiration for Alpha Animals, which was the number plates game.
Yeah.
I mean, I had two, because when I was very young, and I love facts, and I think there's a lot of us who love trivia. So again, coming with the BrainBox thing, a bit of trivia goes an awful long way. But I got this Dunlop book of facts,
right.
And in it had all the second and third letters of all number plates. as to which counties they were from.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, the way I did my number plate game for Alpha Animals was simply looking at the first letter and then thinking of an animal beginning with that letter. Then I thought, that's too easy. Can we do birds and insects? And I'll tell you what, how about doing this one for you? If I said to you, name an insect beginning with A, could you give me one?
And?
Everybody says that.
Yeah.
Now, the way the game plays is that you can't say the name of an animal twice. So can you think of another one?
No,
it's difficult, and I'm not here to embarrass you. Aphids is a good example, but you start thinking about it, it's actually not as easy as it looks, and it's really good. So you with this game, with Alpha Animals, you let the younger child go first, so they can say the ant. So the next player has to think of a different one. But you need the element of chance in it, so it may not always be an insect; it could be a bird, a fish, etc., etc. So it's thinking of the idea, then making it into an accessible game, and when we start a game, we do an awful lot of research to make sure that it is accessible and is playable and is enjoyable to be played 3, 4, 5 times, as opposed to being played once and put away and never played again.
See, we were talking about the number plates. Someone else had a maths game with the number plates. They had to add up all the numbers in the number plate.
Yeah, that works as well. But how do you make that into an accessible game? I'm sure you
exactly.
can, and I'd have to think about it. But
Nope.
but yes, you're absolutely right. But that's looking at the environment, and that just happened to be. And so the inspiration for Alpha Animals was the traffic jam on the M25 and looking at number plates. But it was also a fact that we'd had our first child, and I was spending a lot of time in corporate life. And you know what? I thought, it'd be nice to spend more time at home. And so it's a confluence of both of those events happening that we started the Green Board Game Company up.
Now, the Green Board Game, as it takes its title, the environment, what are you doing for the environment, putting back in?
Right, what we tried now, we got to sort of morph ourselves back to 1991. Then most games are in big boxes full of plastic, full of fresh air. And so what we did is we tried to make our games in smaller boxes, tried to make them out of all recycled material. If it wasn't recycled, it had to be recyclable. And we made it in the UK. Now, that's called reducing your carbon footprint. Now, in 1991, that term didn't exist. It was
people probably looked at you a bit weird when you talked about that.
Yeah, so we just called it making it locally. But we thought that was a good idea. And it's not just good for the environment, it's good for the economy. Because I think if you're making stuff in the UK, people will have, if there's more manufacturing in the UK, there's more money in the UK, and I think it's great to do that. And even today, we try very, very hard to make as much as we can in the UK. For instance, all of our cards are made in the Jewel of the East, we call it, Canvey Island in Essex. So we make an awful lot of our product in the UK still.
Oh, that's always good news. That's always good news. So is there a set time for board games for you?
No, we play all the year round. I mean, clearly there's a golden quarter near the end of the year because people are thinking, should I refresh some things for Christmas? But we actually do sell an awful lot all year round, and part of that is most of our games have a strong educational flavour to them, and because of that, a lot of schools buy them, and so there's sales on that side of the year, and a lot of museums buy our things because we work with people like the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum, etc., making things, and because of that, clearly they want them in the tourist times as well. So, but there is a golden quarter for games.
Yes. Is there a Christmas edition?
We bring things out every single time, and I tell you, a game we're bringing out right now is called Senior Moments. It's a BrainBox game aimed at the over 55. So all of those images you've got from your childhood, it's fantastic. I mean, you're obviously far too young, but for people like me, it's perfect.
No, I think you'll find that I qualify for that as well. It's very kind of you to say that, but I know, and you know, and we know that I've been playing board games for a good 45 years now.
Okay, right.
Yeah, so we know where we are on that one. Listen, it's great to chat to you about board games, and I wish you all the very best with the BrainBox series, because I know it is a huge success. Presumably people can get information.
Yeah, can, and it's on all the W's, greenboardgames.com. And what's really good about that is we do have an inventors page. So if you are an inventor, we've got some links to some really good places like the Patent Office and the British Toy and Hobby Association. So greenboardgames.com will give you lots of information.
That's lovely. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Gary.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers. Have a good Christmas. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Same to you and to your family. Bye-bye.